Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. This is one of our special summer episodes where we are not talking about the news. We're going to talk about some other stuff, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of other stuff before we start. Namely, the Commentary Roast, October 19th here in New York City. The roastee is Clifford Asness, one of the most brilliant minds in American finance and banking and hedge funding and the like, and it is going to be a fantastic, what we are putting together, not going to tell you much, but what we're putting together is going to be a fantastic, hilarious, zippy, lively, fun evening. We do this once a year. It's, I have to say, even though we have people here from the American Enterprise Institute who throw a hell of a gala, this is a gala unlike any other, a gala that people sort of talk about for years. And if you've never been, please go to commentary.org/roast to look at tickets and tables. And if you have been, you are going to want to come back this year. Trust me. So that is the Cliff Asness Roast, October 19th here in New York, commentary.org/roast for more information. And if you come, you will meet my fellow panelists. Executive Editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Senior Editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
Washington commentary columnist Matthew Continetti. Hi, Matt.
Hi, John.
And social commentary columnist Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
So we've been doing some cultural stuff. I thought maybe we would do, it's not really travel, it's more like history, travel, Americana, and the like. And I thought maybe what we would try to do here today is for us all to offer suggestions here in the last couple weeks of summer, and indeed into the fall of next year, if you need to make plans, of places in the United States. I think I specified the United States, but maybe I didn't, in which case we could do the planet. But places that you maybe haven't seen or haven't been to that we really, really love.
I have to interrupt you here.
Okay.
This is what you meant by favorite obscure sites? Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Oh.
You thought I meant sites?
I thought you meant internet sites.
Oh, okay.
I have a whole list.
Oh, well, I spelled it S-I-T-S.
I'm not revealing those. I'm sorry. I won't reveal my favorite.
Yeah.
Matt's going to go first.
Okay, well, Matt is
You talk about your travel, and then I'll come in at the end on a
sites?
totally different
Just
subject.
to make it clear.
Show you what a digital native I am.
Yes. Sites as an internet is S-I-T.
Yes.
I guess
that's how you spelled it. Yeah, they're both spelled the same.
Well, you said, I believe the text said unknown sites in America.
In travel, sometimes you say your favorite SIGHTS's favorite sites.
Actually, no.
No?
I'm
actually, that is not correct. What do we call a campsite? A campsite.
Campsite. But sightseeing is visual when you go sightseeing.
Okay, well, now what we need is...
This is the first episode. Tune in to the next one where we actually talk about this.
To have a solution here and have one of these AIs go psychotic and then tell us that we're supposed to jump off a building or something.
What we need is Trump to mediate.
Yeah,
Bring Trump in. We'll meet in a neutral site, SITE.
I think... I say we all go with our favorite physical sites, except Matt. I want to hear your favorite.
Now I'm interested.
Right. No. I agree. Okay, I will go in last. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, we're going in all kinds of fun directions, and maybe we could all mention internet sites. Okay. So, Christine, you are a person well-traveled from the South. You live in the mid-North. You've spent a lot of time in the upper north of the United States, and you've been all over and you know everything. So what would you recommend?
Okay, so I'm going to recommend, because for more than 20 years, every summer I've gone to Mount Desert Island in Maine. And I started going as a young adult, and I ended up taking my kids there every summer. And it is, most people go to Bar Harbor, which is kind of a honky-tonkish sort of, tourist trap town. Maybe they do a few of the hikes in Acadia, like Cadillac Mountain, which is beautiful. You can actually drive up there and watch the sunrise. It's one of the easternmost parts of the U.S. Beautiful. But, there are some tourist destinations people go. So I wanted to recommend a place, particularly for people who have kids, because you can take your young kids on this trail to this special place and they can hang out and play for a while. It's a nice place to have a picnic. I did this every year with my sons, and it is now one of their favorite places. And it's called Little Hunter's Beach on Mount Desert Island. And it's pretty easy to find on any of the trail maps. It's a pretty easy hike, even for little toddlers. My kids did it on their own. But it has, at low tide, cool tidal pools that kids can kind of stay around. It's a very rocky beach. Not a lot of shade, but you can find a little bit and sit and read a book, which is what I always do. And then as the kids get older, they can clamber up on the rocks and sort of explore. There's some trails above the rocks. It's just a beautiful, quiet little cove. And it's not an entirely hidden gem because people who go to the island know that it's there. If you're very intrepid as your kids get older, go get an old early 20th century trail map of Acadia. And there you'll find lots of ghost trails that the National Park Service knows exist and don't tend, but are kind of little secret hidden paths. And if you have, one of my kids is very good at orienteering and finding wayfinding. So we actually have explored a few of those ghost trails, and they're fascinating. You'll find little off the beaten path places still in one of the national parks that is one of the most heavily visited on Earth. You can still find these secret places. But for little kids and even just adults who want a beautiful spot on the island, go to Little Hunter's Beach on Mount Desert Island in Maine.
Okay, can I? You talk about ghost trails. It just reminds me of a story. In 1998, several of us may or may not have done this. There used to be a lot of junkets. There used to be a lot of groups that would take you on trips and stuff for free, so you could see places like. So I went. The American Swiss Federation. I went on a trip to Switzerland, courtesy of the American Swiss Federation. Most of this trip was excruciatingly boring, as we went to reinsurance company after reinsurance company and sat in the boardroom and had them explain how reinsurance worked. And no, I'm not kidding. But one day we took a train up an Alp. I wish I could remember which Alp. But this train ride was astonishing because it was like, you literally went from like the base, which was a village or a town or something like that. You went up and then you saw like Heidi's farm. And then you saw, I don't know, where the von Trapp family crossed in from Austria. And then finally you get to the top, and then you're at the top of this Alp. And there I was at the top of this Alp. And they're like, if you want to hike down, you can hike down. So I don't know where we're up 7,000 feet or something like that. And I was like, hey, I've done that. Like I've been at, I've been to Zion and Bryce National Parks. I could do this. And then this is 1998 in Switzerland. So by the way, like, as you heard, you go to Europe and there are all these things that we have that they don't have, like ice in the summer, right? Like no one has any ice for their drinks and they don't have air conditioning. So what I didn't know was that if you go hiking in Switzerland, maybe this is no longer true. That's why I mentioned it was 1998. But they say, okay, go down this trail, down this extremely steep mountain. And there's nothing there. I mean, it's a trail. You can see this is where people walk down. But there are no guardrails. There's no one's made like steps. You're just going down this trail. And if you trip, you're like Charlie Brown in the comic book when Lucy, like rolling like a bowling ball down 10,000. So I walked down about 150 feet and I was like, no. Like, you know what? Maybe it's a violation of nature and the rules of hiking to have a well-lit, well-carved path like we have in the national parks to help us with hiking, and that this is much more natural, and we Americans are spoiled and we're like in Wall-E, we just sit in chairs and everybody does everything for us.
No. Now in Acadia, by the way, they put the cairns, the stones. People do it with stones. It's a little
they
more...
didn't even have those, is what I'm trying to tell you. That was my... So that was my hiking. That was my...
How did you get down from the mountain?
Back on the train.
Oh.
So you could take the train back, or you could go down the mountain on the trail. And so I thought, I've done Masada. Like I said, I've been in Bryce Zion, but you know what? The Swiss, they make clocks, and they make chocolate, and they steal Holocaust. They steal works of art from Jews, and they put them in bank vaults and won't let them go. And they continue to hold on to them, and they're fonts of international criminal banking, and they have terrible trail markers. That's all I'm saying. And everybody has a gun, which is nice, I gather. And if you're a citizen of Switzerland, you have to have a gun, and they have a very old constitution, and they have terrible trails. Okay. Matt, do you want to go? Shall we switch gears and go with fun internet sites?
Keep going with your travel.
Okay,
keep going
all
with
right.
your travel.
Okay. Hey.
Excuse me. My site, I don't know that it qualifies as obscure. In fact, I think it's almost the opposite of obscure, given that it's right in Times Square. But it's new and probably not well known. And I happened to have just gone, and it was really good. And it is the Museum of Broadway. And I thought they did a great job. It only opened in like 2023, I believe. And it's 3 stories, and you have to get your tickets in advance because it's a sort of timed, because they can't let everyone just sort of show up at once and mob the place. And it tells the entire story of Broadway from before the theater hub was anywhere near Broadway, when it was downtown, to up to the present moment. And I think that's the only way to tell it is chronologically, because if you approach it in terms of genre, it will get too confusing and too everything else. And so they do a really good job of mixing sort of memorabilia and all sorts of show plans and real items that were taken from actual shows, and they don't kill you with reading and information. It's not, that's always a weird sort of decision to make at a museum. Like how much am I going to be reading today, as opposed to sort of like ingesting in other ways. And they make that pretty easy, because if you're talking about Broadway, there's so much visual and sonic to go with. So it's a little noisy. There's like, one minute you're hearing, Oklahoma, and then in the next room you may be hearing like Guys and Dolls already a little bit. But there's a lot to take in, and they have certain exhibits or exhibitions devoted just to particular shows. But mostly it's about, and those change, but mostly it's about decades or eras and what went on in them, who were the giants, and it's curated somehow all of a piece. It really works. It tells a story, and I have to say, almost uniquely, as a museum experience in the past 10 years, I didn't get any wokeness thrown at me. And this is an area where they could go deep. I mean, they discuss, there's a bunch on sort of minstrelsy, which was real, and which was a big part of early theater in this country. But there's not, you don't get like the sort of alternate story of Broadway. You get the story of Broadway, and so it was new to me. So I took it as obscure, and I recommend it.
Okay, the Museum of Broadway. This is in good contrast to the worst museum that I have been to in the last 10 years, which is the Academy Museum in LA. Very notorious, right? The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences spent years and $500 million developing this former department store into a museum. And then they opened it, and mysteriously, the entire history of Hollywood was not being told, because in the wake of George Floyd and everything, they decided to leave out the inconvenient fact that Hollywood was created by Jews, and that all of the original studios were the work of Jewish immigrants, and that even Cecil B. DeMille, the first great founder of Hollywood, was actually the son of a Jewish mother. And instead, they focused on, minority representation in Hollywood. I went to it after all that controversy had sort of died down, and it is a dreadful museum. It is badly organized. It's exactly as you would say. It's organized thematically with weird exhibits about strange sidelight issues, that don't make any real sense, and there's no story to be told in all of this. And like anything, cinema is something that's 125 years old basically, and you would want to tell it chronologically and thematically and explain and do all sorts of offshoots. It's a catastrophe of a museum undone by politics and by this fancy idea based on gender studies and the studies world, that you don't treat things as historical matters but as thematic study issue things. And so don't go to the Academy Museum is what I'm saying.
And also in common with what Abe was talking about is that museum, John, after they redid the early history part so that they could include the Jews, and they basically gave put a lot of emphasis on like the minstrelsy and blackface and Al Jolson and all that stuff too, right? It was like there were no Jews, and then the Jews who founded Hollywood were just racist white people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really that, as I say, it's not even, the problem isn't even that this, which is a real problem, very representative of where the mindset of the museum world, since this was the most expensive museum incepted in the United States in the last 10 years. So where, fashionable museum thinking was, and where thinking was on American Jewry, but it's also just like as an experience for somebody who just wants to go to an interesting museum, it is designed to repel you and not to invite you in. Okay. So, do I go? And then Matt, you want to go? Is that how we want to do this? Okay, Matt's muted. He's like,
no, Seth hasn't gone. Seth
hasn't gone. Seth.
Yeah.
You go.
So I'm going to say, when you said unknown in the chat, we all have different definitions of that, but I think a lot of people don't realize that this is right under their nose. I'm going with the Cloisters and Fort Tryon Park. This is in Washington Heights.
Northern Manhattan. Yes.
Northern Manhattan.
Yeah.
And everything around you in that part of Manhattan is very Manhattan-y. There's nothing, you don't feel like you're about to emerge into a secret garden. And then but Fort Tryon Park is one of the most beautiful things you could ever see. It is, the park itself has been really designed to be as wide ranging as possible, with in terms of everything planted there, and the way that it's arranged is like, it's very New York to step into what feels like this sort of like global garden thing. It's enormous. The garden is enormous. Certainly among the biggest public gardens that you could see in New York, if not at the top. And the Cloisters are these. It's a sort of medieval art museum that is built from. Cloisters were they're like these walkway atria, type places, parts of churches where you would be able to sort of sit and reflect or whatever. It was like supposed to be a sort of spiritual nook, I guess. And so the Cloisters is a museum, like a castle, built of cloisters. They took parts of actual cloisters in France. The largest part is made up of French cloisters, but there's also Spanish cloisters, and they put it together, and they shipped it over in stones, and they put it back together. These old medieval cloisters, and they built a museum that is entirely built of the one part of church grounds or whatever that everybody, can really enjoy. This sort of, a place where you walk under trees or in a hallway with art on the ceiling or something. And so the entire place is this like vacation from thinking, from the world. It's like stepping into, a kind of, another dimension right there in Washington Heights of all places. And it also has a famously huge dog run. So dog owners absolutely love it's like everything. It's like it's uncommonly beautiful. It's over the Hudson. You walk to the edge of this beautiful park and you're looking over the Hudson. And so it's just and there is a hamster buried there that is near and dear to our family also. But don't tell Bloomberg, because when he became mayor, he made everything in the Cloisters like you had to pay to take photographs of yourself
and to bury hamsters. And to bury hamsters.
And to bury hamsters.
Yeah.
So I would say Fort Tryon Park in general, but with the Cloisters, and so it's sort of a perfect nook in a perfect place.
I mean, we should mention that the Cloisters is part of the Metropolitan Museum, and it is the medieval collection of the Metropolitan Museum. So that is housed there specifically as sort of like an early, I think, 30s, early 40s, like a concept museum that you would take this stuff that's medieval and you would put it in something that looks like a medieval building, and unlike a modern Romanesque or art museum. And so what it has famously is this collection of tapestry, gigantic French and I think mostly French tapestries of the 10th, 11th, 12th centuries hanging on the walls endlessly. So that is a great recommendation. Okay, now Matt, it comes down to you and me. You want to do? Should I do a site and then we're gonna shift?
Well, yeah, you do a site, and then I'll shift, and then you comment on my sites. Let's do that.
Okay, so I want to mention something that you would never do unless you were in a very specific place, which is always, to me, it's like I keep saying to my kids, don't get a tourist T-shirt. Like, don't get you won't go someplace you want a T-shirt. Only get a tourist T-shirt from a place that anybody that you have ever met will ever have the same T-shirt of. So, like, an ice cream parlor in a town in Minnesota that you drove through, and that has really great ice cream, and they'll go, what is that you're wearing? That's a good T-shirt. But like a T-shirt from the Hard Rock Cafe, not a good T-shirt. So this is the ultimate of these, because it's a road. It's a road that I ended up driving totally by happenstance, because I was visiting my friend and sometime podcast guest, Daniel Cass, with my daughter. He has a house in Tennessee, and my daughter, I decided to go to Dollywood for the day, and he said, well, the way you do that is you drive on Route 129. And it turns out Route 129, which is on the border of North Carolina and Tennessee, there is a stretch of 11 miles that is called the Tail of the Dragon. And it is an 11-mile road with 318 curves. So it's a little like Lombard Street in San Francisco or something, but it's 11 miles long in the mountains, in the Great Smoky Mountains. And it is one of the damnedest experiences you will ever have, because all these motorcyclists from across the country take treks to the Tail of the Dragon to ride up and down the Tail of the Dragon on their motorcycles. So when you're there in this completely, rural, obscure place in the Great Smoky Mountains, basically going from one place to the other, and it's obviously like a 19th century switchback road that they had to make this way for whatever reason of the topography in the Great Smoky Mountains, that they just paved over at some point in the 40s or 50s. And like my daughter basically had to lie down because she got so nauseous. It's like a ride. It's literally like but it's 11 miles long. And as you're doing it, and you want to do it at like 20 miles an hour, because it's kind of unnerving. There are all these motorcycles behind you and ahead of you, and then they start getting a little irritated with you because it's a 2-lane road, and they want to go faster, and so sometimes you have to pull over. And I didn't know it existed. I didn't know it existed until I was 63 years old or something like that. And it is like one of those things where you go, this country is so big, and there's so like, if you went to Switzerland, if you went to Luxembourg, and they had a road like this in Luxembourg, it would be the number 2 trafficked tourist place in Luxembourg. Like in Maui, there's a road that's sort of like this, though it's 3 hours long, called the Road to Hana.
The Road
which
to
is
Hana,
also
yeah,
very curvy, right? And that's like millions of people go on the Road to Hana to have the experience of driving on the Road to Hana. And I never even heard of the Tail of the Dragon. It's sort of known to motorcycle enthusiasts and people who live in the region who have to get from one place to another, and like are stealing themselves to go on the Tail of the Dragon. And yes, I have a T-shirt. I have several T-shirts of the Tail of the Dragon.
Where do you get the T-shirts at the end?
There's a place in the middle. There's a place at the end, and there's also a place.
There's a motorcycle resort along the 11 miles, right? It's like a famous. I have a friend who's a cyclist.
It's in a national park, though, so it's not like they have. It's not like there are hotels or anything.
Right.
It is literally a stretch of road, and then there are some lookouts. There are places where you can sort of pull over and do a lookout into the. So that is my natural. Crazy natural site. And then I want to shout out one of the best museums in America that you would never go to, the Clark in Williamstown, Massachusetts, which is the home of Williams College. And the Clarks were one of these American families. There are families that like this. Isabella Stewart Gardner being in Boston being one of them. They were, well-to-do Americans with a taste for art who went and collected art with their money when art was cheap, at the beginning and into the middle of the 20th century. And the Clark is a mostly representational museum of 19th to 20th century. There's a lot of Renoirs, but there's also a lot of American art of the late 19th century. Some of which depicts sort of the areas in Maine that Christine was talking about. And the Clark is unlike the Academy Museum, is a genuinely brilliantly curated and run museum, whose permanent collection is as efficient and briskly gone through and stunning as any you'll ever see. And they also have fantastic shows. Like they had a show of Munch, Edvard Munch, whom, of course, we all know from one and only one painting, not painting, whatever, the Scream. And it turned out Munch was really a remarkable and genuinely great artist with hundreds of works to his credit that are just simply not, a postage stamp or, like an image that the Simpsons makes fun of. And that was a very revelatory show that I saw at the Clark. It's beautiful. It's in the northwestern tip of the Berkshire Mountains. It's about 40 minutes from Albany. And if you're ever in that neck of the woods, it is worth taking several hours to go out of your way to go to Williamstown, Massachusetts, to go to the Clark Museum of Art. Matthew Continetti, you have internet.
Well, I do, but your mention of the Clark Museum put me in mind of another museum also in Massachusetts, which is the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art, which is in, where is it in? It's technically it's near Mount Holyoke, so it's in Amherst. Yeah, so if you're ever in Amherst, Massachusetts, go to the Eric Carle Museum, which, if you like children's picture books as I do, is a delight. But I was
all right. Stop stalling, Matt.
I was ruminating over why I so misinterpreted your direction, John. And at first I thought, it was because I'm younger, and so I hear site and I think internet site. But then over the course of the episode, I realized that it actually makes me old because no one visits internet sites anymore.
They just go away.
Web traffic is dead. Yeah, everything is on social media. So, if you are inclined to actually open up Chrome or Safari and visit actual internet sites, I do have a few recommendations. I'm just going to go through them quickly. The first is also a Substack. It's called Recommendo, RECOMENDO.com. Basically a group's Substack / website put together by Kevin Kelly, the very famous former editor of Wired magazine. And on Recommendo, they send you each Sunday morning a list of recommendations. Sometimes they're other sites on the internet, sometimes they're products, sometimes they're apps. But I have found it extremely useful and also very expansive in what they find. So that's Recommendo. It occurred to me that, especially for some of our younger listeners or viewers, the following site might not be top of mind for them. But I've been visiting Arts and Letters Daily every day for about 25 years now at aldaily.com. Also, now you can get it partly on Substack. Arts and Letters Daily was founded by a kind of Australian literary critic way back in the early internet, and it's a collection of links on intellectual and literary matters. As always, trends left. But the nice thing about Arts and Letters Daily, if you go to the website, is on the left side column, there's a link to basically every single newspaper and magazine that has some type of bearing on intellectual life. So AL Daily would be my second one. And then let me just see which. Okay, so I think for my third one, I'm just going to say a site that I only became aware of in the past year, but that I really enjoy, and that's the site piratewires.com. And Pirate Wires is the project of this tech billionaire, Mike Solana, who basically became an anti-woke liberal, and he's moved farther to the right than an anti-woke liberal, but that's how he started. And it's a kind of a news site, you might call it. My favorite part, though, is if you go to Pirate Wires, you can sign up for their daily email, which I find just hilarious. And it's comes into your inbox every morning, and it gives you 3 stories, and the Pirate Wires writers' takes on those stories, which are very glib, very pithy, sometimes a little bit risque. So just warning you there, a little trigger warning for sensitive folks. But always enjoyable and on topic. So those would be my 3 sites: Recommendo, Arts and Letters Daily, and piratewires.com.
The Arts and Letters Daily's impact on the early, as an early curation site on the internet was so important for more than 20 years ago when a bunch of us founded the New Atlantis, and we had this online, we were a print journal, but we had an online presence. When Arts and Letters, Dennis Donahue, what was his name?
Dennis Denogue, I think.
Yeah. So when Dennis would link to one of our pieces, we would get this massive amount of traffic. We would get new subscribers. It was, nobody understands this now in the era of social media, but pre-social media, it was the only way to drive people to a small, quirky little publication like ours. And it was transformative. And not only that, it was so selective. It really, and earlier on, I think it was a little more ecumenical in terms of, politics. I think it has trended more left in recent years, but
he is since deceased, I believe.
Yes, he did. He died sort of tragically at not that old an age. But it was such an important early internet curation site, and many others have modeled themselves on its the way it did things. And so,
it ruined. We should say that it got ruined because it was purchased by the Chronicle of Higher Education. That is how Arts and Letters Daily got ruined. So. Dennis Dutton, who founded it, who founded it with a longtime commentary contributor named David, also who died tragically young, named David Myers, D.G. Myers. They started it together, and it was anti-woke before anybody knew what woke was. It was literally a highbrow site that was looking for material about arts and letters that looked at those matters from a non-ideological perspective, so that it would, if it connected to commentary, it would connect to Joseph Epstein. If it connected to the New Criterion, it would connect to Joseph Epstein. or others, if it connected to the New Atlantis or something like that, it would run. That was its reason for being, and the reason that it got so popular. And then Chronicle of Higher Education bought it, and Chronicle of Higher Education did, which is to say that it ruined it, and it's a shadow of its.
It does still link to
It
commentary, we should say.
It does occasionally, but it is. It was daily. I don't even know if it's daily anymore, even though it's called
I
Arts
think
and
it's
Letters
5
Daily.
days a week. They put new link every.
Yeah, but it's just not. It was vital,
Right.
and it was one of those sites that during the linking days there were these things that like Romanesco, like this guy Jim Romanesco, who did a media site where
Right.
he had links, or Drudge was the ultimate linker, still is sort of like the ultimate linker. But these sites and Real Clear Politics, those remain, like Drudge and Real Clear Politics remain as link ways you can drive some attention to your material. But the Arts and Letters Daily tragedy is that it had a very well-defined place in the intellectual ecosystem of the English-speaking world, and the kludge, politically inert, stupid, self-righteous Chronicle of Higher Education just rang all the life out of it. As far as most of now, Matt is still recommending it, so I'm not being.
I still check
Maybe
it.
I'm not
every
being
week.
fair.
I
Thank you, John.
still.
And this is what I particularly am suggesting for younger audience members, because one, they may not visit internet sites, but two, you do get a sense of what the intellectualoids, as they used to be called in the American Spectator, are saying and thinking, and it's a good way to establish a framework for encountering the life of the mind.
I mean, it's funny because the linking people, and we should also mention like Instapundit, Glenn Reynolds, who was also a linker, and all this is that it was a way of editing that which was already edited. In other words, it was like somebody just put up stuff that he thought was interesting, and if he had an interesting mind and an interesting perspective that was, far-reaching and wasn't limited to just one tiny topic, it was a fantastic way of finding material that you might not otherwise find. So as it was sort of a form of it was like the Reader's Digest effect, and it was really great for like 15 years. Excuse me. And then
It was also, I mean, it was basically a forerunner to social media, we should say too. I mean, when we started, when the blog era started, these were ways where people said, "Oh, you like my stuff, you might like their stuff." It really was a social thing, and bloggers couldn't really get traffic much any other way. But it was like the original social media. It was it was very important to have a list of of recommended sites on your site, going down the side.
But that was where, like, I missed that era, because that was as John said, someone's really interesting mind would put you in directions that you might not have discovered before. Whereas now everything on social media is surfaced by an algorithm, so it's actually less creative and more narrowing, I think, in some ways than that early era. Which with this,
you can kind of get it. You can kind of get it from certain Twitter feeds, right, where you have somebody who is, again, sort of has an interesting perspective and will link to stuff that is kind of somewhat unexpected, or ranges a field ideologically, so that if you're in the right wing ecosystem, you might find something of interest that somebody on the left has written or said, and vice versa. And they're sort of like pioneers, like pioneering blogger Mickey Kaus, who doesn't tweet very much, and is right now consumed with the Epstein story, but always find something that you wouldn't read otherwise often. Tyler Cowen does that too, not just on Twitter, but that was a thing, and it was like a praiseworthy thing that people understood, that you could find things out that you might not have access to otherwise. And then the partisanship just got so severe that it's very uncommon, unless you're former staffers of commentary who now like to link to blogging items about.
I mean, Tyler
genocide.
Tyler Cowan still does this. Glenn
Yeah.
Reynolds still does this. So
Yeah.
it does seem anachronistic, but if you're wanting to know kind of what's happening in Tyler Cowan's case, Tyler Cowan, for those who don't know, is this economist at George Mason University who is just a kind of the dictionary definition of a polymath. He knows something about everything, knows quite a great deal about global food and travel, but also chess, music. And his site, marginalrevolution.com, is very, very much worth visiting. And then, you can go to Instapundit.
Restaurants. Yeah, he'll do anything.
He does anything, and he also has a very good podcast.
In Omaha, like that, like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He reads 5 books a day.
He's very good on Mexican art. If you want indigenous Mexican art tips, he gets into that. Yeah. And then, Glenn Reynolds, you can go to Instapundit and still see what he has to say. He's very MAGA, as many are. But he'll serve up the news that he thinks is worth paying attention to.
I also want to endorse your Pirate Wires choice, because Pirate Wires is really great. It's funny. Like, part of it is that the impulse of Pirate Wires is to write from this anti-woke perspective, but everything is with a wry eye, and it's not, there's no rage, there's no outrage, there's no, if you don't do that, you're going to die. And Solana himself, who usually writes 1 item a day, is a particularly funny, like close to laugh out loud funny writer who can really pull off a one-liner, which is very annoying because he's like a really good funny writer and be a billionaire, and that's not fair. Like, be one or the other. You can't be both. It's not fair to the rest of us. I understand that things are unequally distributed. That is part of conservatism, the acknowledgement of the unequal distribution of gifts and what it means to be human and how we shouldn't evaluate people according to such things. But come on, I mean, really, like.
Well, this is where Tyler Cowan is the great equalizer. To go back to him, right? Because if you have ever been in an airport lounge and seen a book just lying there, it might have been Tyler Cowan's book, because he has a famous habit of what he calls liberating books. And what he means by that is, first of all, he can stop reading a book without finishing it. He knows, whether he's going to like, but when he's really done with a book that he's not going to need, he leaves it where he is sitting at that moment in time. So if he's in an airport and he leaves through the book and he decides, all right, I'm done with this book, the book stays in an airport. If he's in a hotel lobby or something. So the world is littered with Tyler Cowan, the things that have contributed to Tyler Cowan's polymathic mind.
So there we have it. So we have the Museum of Broadway, right in the middle of Times Square. You got to make an advance reservation to go there. If you want to go about 7 miles north of the Museum of Broadway, you can hit the Cloisters, the medieval museum. Looks like supposed to look like a medieval church in the beautiful Fort Tryon Park, with a great dog run and a dead hamster from the Mandel family. The beach, again, Christine.
Little Hunters Beach in Acadia National Park.
In Acadia National Park. Matt, we just did the sites, and I recommended, if you're anywhere between North Carolina and Tennessee, trying to find your way to the Tail of the Dragon, that this remarkable stretch of US 129, and the Clark Museum of Art in Williamstown, Massachusetts. So that is our show for today. We will be back anon. For Christine, Seth, Matt, and Abe, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.